Uh-huh.
In the end, you still be you. On the third morning, you said I could do.
I say I'm tough.
I'm what's your name?
Lynn Kaiser Conrad.
Oh, Lynn, yeah, Lynn is tough. I'm tough too.
Lynn made 7 PSAs. I'm playing 7 The Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards every Thursday at 6:15 on Goliath Radio. Gwen Azama-Edwards, retired city clerk, former city commissioner, city of Daytona Beach. The Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards on Goliath Radio.
Stan, you've been sitting much.
I forgot to check that.
I did.
It's okay.
Yeah. Stan, you've been sitting much too long, much too long. Welcome, 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 welcome to Truth, a radio program designed with you in mind, a program whose sole purpose is to empower you, our listeners, for information leads to knowledge, and knowledge is, you got it, power. And as always, I want to empower you to take control of your life, those things that impact you, your family, and your community. As always, too, I want you to go to the website at www.gwen-truth.com, and all those all-important links will be available to you, and that all-important information will just leap out at you, and you will be able to totally take control. Also want you to go to the website so that you can respond to the query that we have going concerning Amendment 2. The marijuana amendment, and I want you to go there too, so you can actually even watch the videos of previous shows, radio shows that we've had that have been uploaded to YouTube. So loads and loads of information just for you and your empowerment. As has been stated, I'm Gwen Azama-Edwards, former city commissioner, retired city clerk, city of Daytona Beach, current president, CEO. Actually, the business, that business has been closed. So, but I am minister, author, and a person who's very much involved in the community. And hopefully a lot of you are too, in terms of our volunteers. And let me just do a shout out to all those great and awesome volunteers who really work with all of the social service agencies to help them be able to provide the services that are provided in our community. And we have a great network of social services that are available in Volusia County for sure. And so a shout out to all of those who help to make that network work. Also, shout out to all of the individuals who are rooting for our Rattler, not the Rattlers, right, no, the Wildcats. Hey! Much success, continued success, we pray for them. This month, October, is a special month, and my guest, Cheryl Fuller, Executive Director and CEO of the Domestic Abuse Council, is my guest, and she will explain to you why the month of October is so important. And even though we've continually told you why, and you see a lot of people, as she and I are sporting the purple, wearing purple, and they've had activities like the Purple Walk and all of that, which she's going to get into a little bit as well. There are reasons for that, and our subject, of course, tonight is domestic abuse, and signs for it, what you can do, should do, and how important it is not to be an enabler. So we're going to go ahead and just going to get right into it, because this is a timely issue, but it's a very important issue as well, as is always the case. So Cheryl, and I always say I'm going to say as little as possible, but when I can, I will step in and say a little something. But tonight we really want to help to empower individuals who are either victims or who know someone who is a victim, who's just not sure. but they're a good friend, they're a good family member, they really want to help that individual. So share with individuals, first of all, what the Domestic Abuse Council, what your mission is, what it is, the services that you provide, and then let's get into some indicators and other types of stuff that will be helpful to our listeners.
Okay, thank you for inviting me here tonight, Gwen. I truly appreciate it.
And I'm going to say too, before you go very much further, you know, I say that a lot of people that I bring on are really my friends, and they are. But this too is a very, very special friend, someone that I met as a result of starting to work and do a little bit, you know, and helping with the Domestic Abuse Council. And I want to thank you, Cheryl, as well as your staff, but also those individuals who are your volunteers, who work on your board, who volunteer time and time again to help you all in getting the message out and ensuring that you have funding, etc., that you need to do this very, very important mission that's important to our community. So I just want to start off just saying thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Because you're a true community supporter, and we love you for that, so thank you, Gwen. To start with, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Gwen kind of let you to understand that, but Gwen, I'm going to come right out and tell them that. And in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, our agency does and holds several events, which we'll talk about a little later in the program. But the Domestic Abuse Council's mission is to end domestic violence in our community. That sounds like a huge and somewhat overwhelming task, but it's one in my heart I believe we can accomplish with some change in maybe some of our social structure and some of our knowledge and attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, which if we all get behind it, we can do. One of our major programs that we offer is our emergency shelter. Emergency shelter is essential for victims of domestic violence who need to flee their abusive situation because they are in extreme danger and need a safe, confidential place to stay. The shelter is available 24 hours a day, every day of the year. We're there on Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, every day, every minute of the day. To access shelter services, individuals can call our 1-800 number, our hotline, which is also available every minute of the day, and is available on our website. And I'm sure that you'll make sure I repeat that number over and over again.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to do it right now. A local number is 255-2102. The statewide hotline is 1-800-500-1119. And when I say statewide hotline, it's important for individuals to understand that that's exactly what it will do. If you call that number and you're near the Jacksonville area, it will put you through to Hubbard House, which is the Certified Domestic Violence Center there. So that 1-800 number is great for victims because no matter where they're at in the state of Florida, they'll be able to access a hotline and receive services through a Certified Domestic Violence Center. In addition to our shelter, we also have outreach services. We have support groups, awareness classes for victims. We'll meet individually with individuals who are being battered if they need safety or need to talk to an advocate. We work with the children who enter our shelter program by assessing their needs, screening them for child abuse, and trying to hook them up with services to help them depending on the needs that are assessed. We have transitional housing services, and every one of these programs I could probably talk the entire hour on, Gwen, so you'll have to have me back on that. We also have court advocacy. If a victim needs to obtain what is called an injunction for protection, which is somewhat like a restraining order, but gives you a lot more relief, a lot more benefits, and basically the court is telling the abusive partner or instructing them to stay away, maybe vacate the home, whatever it might be. Sometimes they need a little assistance with applying or somebody to hold their hands at court. We have an advocate who will assist them with that, and we have an attorney who will represent them through the court process. So we have a variety of services. I think I've covered it all, and would come to any business, church, civic group, and explain in more detail what we can offer our community.
And do you still have the dog
Yes, we
service
do. Yes,
program
we do.
that's available so that if they have pets, they don't have to worry, there is a
That's
place that
exactly
can take care
right.
of them?
And that's really not our organization.
Right.
We just have a great friend out there. It's called Hush Puppy Haven. And what they do is basically provide foster care for pets of individuals who need safe shelter. We know from our experience working with victims of domestic violence that there are times where they need to flee. But if, due to our communal setting, we can't shelter the animal inside, so the victim would have had to choose, stay with the abuser with my pet, or leave and leave my pet, which in a lot of times means your pet could be hurt. That might
Right.
be a way the abusive partner, quote, gets even with you. So Hush Puppy Haven is our friend, and all we have to do is give them a call, and they arrange for someone to foster that pet until the victim is able to take ownership back.
I think it's just so key and so important that individuals understand that just about everything that you need to be able to remove yourself from that abusive relationship or abusive situation is available. And all they have to do is make the call. Now, when you were on the program before, we were talking though about the fact that there is a waiting list. Do you still have a waiting list?
Gwen, we do. We do have, unfortunately, have a waiting list, but we're really good with still assessing for their safety, trying to arrange for them to have another safe place to stay, whether that be through our sister shelters, and when I say that, I'm referring to the shelters that surround Volusia County. Might be Seminole County, Flagler County, etc. So if they have to go there temporarily until we can get them back to Volusia County, we help them with that. And if it's extremely, extremely important that they flee, we're gonna put them on the couch, we're gonna get out the air mattresses, we'll do what we can to make sure that the victim has safe shelter.
Important for our listeners to know and to hear, because sometimes they think that, oh, you know, they've got a waiting list so they can't help me, but help will be made available in some form or fashion.
That's correct.
Wonderful. Now, we know that there is this case involving the football player where his fiance or girlfriend, because they got married afterwards, was knocked out, and it has to do with, you know, this whole rigmarole in terms of the NFL. But I know a question that you wrote about in the newspaper recently, and question that everyone always asks is, why did they stay? Why did she stay after being abused?
A question that's very frustrating to advocates, as Gwen knows. Her and I have already discussed this. But truthfully, and as I told her, it's one my husband said we need to share. You need to understand what's going on in the minds of survivors of domestic violence. And I use the word survivor. I should back up and say we try to reinforce that an individual living in a violent home is a survivor because they have not been killed and they're still breathing and walking. So they are surviving, and they learn a lot of survival techniques. So we give them that empowerment when we even talk to them on the phone initially. But to understand why they stay, you really need to understand the issue of domestic violence. Individuals in these relationships do not fall in love with the individual who batters them. It's a process that takes time, and a lot of times it can take years before even the first push occurs. During that time, a lot of the victims that we have worked with say the individual who battered them was the most wonderful person in, like, a Prince Charming man when they first met them, everything they wanted. And then all of a sudden, it slowly starts. And it can start as subtly as by how you dress. And it can be done in a kind way. Saying something like, you know, I really love it when you wear pants instead of skirts. You look so much more attractive. Well, the individual thinks, isn't that wonderful? Or maybe I like it when your hair is pulled back instead of, you know, hanging down. You look so much prettier. They don't see it as really tactics of control. They see it as ways that he thinks or she thinks I look attractive. So it's a process that slowly starts. And then it might happen where all of a sudden a shove occurs. And the victim's like, whoa, what happened? Oh, baby, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shove you, it'll never happen again. And this process, like I said, can take time. Now, during that time, she's fallen in love with, or he's fallen in love with, the individual who treats them kind, that doesn't hurt them verbally, who treats their children well. And then, all of a sudden, the shove turns to a slap. The slap turns to a punch. And once somebody starts hurting you physically, there's usually physical threats going on. Mm-hmm. Threats that if you ever leave, I won't just hurt you, I'll hurt anybody around you. Or threats maybe to turn you in, or to tell people you're using drugs or alcohol. So there's this whole process that occurs, because domestic violence isn't just about the physical abuse, it's a process of power and control. With the physical violence, I wish I had the wheel to show everybody, but we're on the radio. It's a process of control, with the physical violence being the major source of control, which makes sense. If tonight an individual leaves work and they told their husband or girlfriend, wife, whichever it might be, their intimate partner, that they'd be home by 7 o'clock, and they get home at 7:15. And the partner hurts them physically, will they ever be late again if they can avoid it? No. Okay, so the abusive individual gains control over the use of physical violence. Once that occurs, all they have to do is use the other techniques, like threats. But there's techniques on the wheel that they'll use to gain just as much control. So there's a lot of fear when you're talking about domestic violence, a great deal of fear. Will they hurt me? Will they follow through with their threats? Will I be able to make it on my own? Where do I go? What does the shelter look like? How much does it cost? I'll never find a job. I haven't got transportation. So the fear of what to expect sometimes makes it easier to stay in the abusive relationship, because you know what's going on there. Then there's the love. After each abusive incident, there's usually an excuse given, or an explanation as to why the abuse occurred. So it's, maybe, baby, I just had a bad day, or, I was drinking too much. The victim hears that, wants to believe it, does love the person, so they're in love, they have hope that they won't do it again, and they hold on to that. It could be economics, which I kind of mentioned in the fear. It's hard to make it as a single parent, or make it even on your own. And maybe I'll stay for the children, because they need a home, they need their dad, I don't want to take them out of their school system. Religious beliefs. Religion, they take their wedding vows seriously, and I'm not going to leave unless I've tried everything. So it's a process, and sometimes I really want individuals to think about if they have ever had to end an abusive, or end any relationship. Have you ever in your life had to end a relationship, even if you have to go back to high school? And did you go, oh, no good, and walk away immediately, or did you kind of, I don't know, and you kind of think about it, and you kind of make sure everything's lined up and that it's the right time to do it? It's the same thing for victims of domestic violence. It's got to be the right time. It's got to be when they're ready to take that step, and that's when we're ready for them. We're ready to help when they're ready.
And the other thing in regard to that, too, someone who's been in an abusive relationship, it's very difficult, even after they leave, to get away from that nightmare in their head. And very difficult, I would think, for them to form attachments, future attachments, because number one, some of them still love that abuser. Some of them still feel guilt because they've left. Or there are individuals in their family that lay the guilt on them because they left, because they feel they didn't try hard enough. They're not there with that person, seeing what he or she is going through. And we should mention that there are men who are abused as well.
That's correct.
It's a smaller number, but there are some men who are also abused, and they feel even more embarrassment about the fact that this female is actually beating up on them or mistreating them.
Exactly.
And they can't control the situation. The female is controlling it all. And then the issue of the children, and sometimes children don't understand. They feel that that's my mother, that's my father. They should be able to stay together and work it out.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I was thinking about, Cheryl, too, as I was on the way to the show, about, there are parents who, and I've had friends who have said this to me, my parents have never, ever had an argument in front of us. They've never said a cross word. And I thought to myself, in actuality, though, those parents felt they were doing the right thing, and I'm sure for a lot of them maybe so, but they did not allow the children to learn the way to work through disagreements. Those are individuals probably who knew how to do it, but they shortchanged their children by not allowing them to see, okay, if we disagree, this is how you work it out, this is how you make it happen, and then stay together. As a result, those kids who never saw it, never experienced it, grew up, I think, in a world that is so much different from what most people have to deal with.
Exactly.
Because in life, in relationships, you're going to have disagreements. You're going to have times when one person tries to get their way.
Right.
But we as human beings need to learn how to, have good relationships, relationships where values and ideas and feelings of others are, cherished or embraced.
Right.
That they don't have to totally think like you and be like you,
Right.
etc., for you to be accepting of them.
Right, and how to compromise.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
that we can have a conflict and that we can resolve it, but that we have to compromise. We
Mhm.
have to have mutual respect.
Absolutely.
And one of the things our Children's Center does with the children, we work a lot with them on safety planning. What do you do when there are adults fighting in a home? Any adult. It could be grandma and grandpa, it could be aunt and uncle, it could be any adult, big brother and sister. What is your responsibility as a child? And that is, of course, to be safe. You're not responsible for any adult's fight. You're not responsible to break it up, because a great many children are injured in domestic violence homes
Trying
because
to get in the middle of
you got it.
yeah.
And then even if they're shoved aside, that can hurt them depending on the force of the person shoving them aside. So we teach them how to remain safe, but we also go over how to dial 911 if they feel somebody is being hurt. And then we do have to talk about, what do you do if mom and dad are having an argument, like over dinner? And dad says, will you get me this? And mom says, no. And dad says, oh, you never do anything. Do you call the police? And some of the kids will go, yeah. No, you don't. It's okay for parents to have that kind of bantering back and forth. So we really work hard with them on recognizing when it's real danger and when parents are just having an argument or having a conflict they're working through. Unfortunately, with children of domestic violence, they usually see the extreme end and they hear the worst of the worst. And that's one of the hardest parts of our jobs. There's the assessment I told you our children's coordinator completes on that, and every child that enters our shelter. And a lot of it is asking the mother the questions and then asking the children questions. Well, to establish a rapport, we'll ask their nickname, what their favorite foods are, and what their favorite subject at school is. Little questions like that. But one of the questions that always tears my heart out, is what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's very common for the little boys to say, I want to grow up so I can kill my dad.
Oh, wow.
And then what do you miss most about being at our shelter? My dad. And to think how conflicted they must be. In one sense, they really hate what they see as the abusive individual, maybe in their viewpoint, the monster. But then they love the dad that they get to see be gentle or kind or plays with them.
Right.
So it's got to be so conflicting for them.
And so they're dealing then in the same way with the same situation that the mother or the person being abused is dealing
Exactly.
with. Same conflicting idea of, I love my dad,
Right.
I don't love it when he acts this
Exactly.
way or that way, or the mother, which either person is the actually abuser.
Exactly.
But children have more difficulty dealing with that.
Exactly. And actually, you know, you said sometimes the kids want to stay home. Yeah, they might want to be home, but they love it when there's no fighting going on. So they really enjoy being at our shelter because they get to be a child again, and we don't allow the loud screaming, we don't allow the, you know, the cussing and the whole bit, and they get treated like a child should be treated. So,
you know, the other thing I was thinking about as I was coming here has to do with the impact again once the person is removed from that abusive situation, and that the negative impact that still continues, though not the violence, not the yelling, not the abusive this, that, and the other, but the impact that it has as a result of having experienced all of that, and how the individuals have to, with the exercise you guys are going through, and what I would imagine those individuals that are abused and the children go through even ongoing. And that's, you know, the opportunity and the ability to learn how to connect with people, feel comfortable in getting close to people again, and really feel, you know, okay with themselves even.
Right.
Because even that child who has called on their parent 911 and they've said this is going on, and then they watch that parent get arrested. And they blame themselves because they're the ones who are responsible, even though they're not. It's actually the person who did all of the abusing that's responsible, but as they see it, they're the ones who caused the separation. They're the ones who caused the parent to be arrested and the like. Do the children have those kind of issues, future issues? How long do you guys kind of follow up or get any feedback?
The families can receive services from us for as long as they want. So even when they leave, if they need additional help, we'd be there to help them. Or we'd make referrals to the other agencies that might also be able to provide the family with counseling, like the House Next Door, Stuart Marchant Act, Children's Home Society. I mean, even the Early Learning Coalition hooked us up where we have a therapist coming to our shelter now to work with children who need more therapy than we can offer. But my experience has been the children adjust a lot quicker than the adults. You give children a stable, loving home and environment, and they can adjust real quickly. Adults a little bit longer, because I think in a lot of these cases, well, not in a lot, because there is child abuse too, and every child who even hears this, if you ask me, is being abused. But they do seem to adjust a lot easier than the adults do. The adults, so you're right, the post-traumatic stress disorder, different things can trigger responses, the fear in them, loud slamming of doors, loud noises, can all of a sudden terrify them, where you and I would turn to see what it is. They literally have their breath taken away. So different things can trigger different emotions for survivors of domestic violence, and we try to work with them on that. They might need to come back to our groups after being gone for 5 years, because it's also common if you live in the situation to bury it, to actually put it away in another part of our beautiful mind that protects us. And all of a sudden one of those triggers, and it could be a movie, it could be somebody in the apartment next to you and you hear the fighting, that all of a sudden unleashes some emotions you didn't even know were there, or memories that you had suppressed. So that can take time, and again, if they need more than we can offer, we would hook them up with a therapist who can help them deal with their mental health issues.
I think that's important for our listeners to know too, and those who will watch the video, that you know, this is not a quick fix thing that happens. It may be quick to get you removed from the physicality of what's going on in the abusive relationship, but the impact of that does take time, because truthfully, the hardest thing for people to deal with are relationships. I mean, it's the hardest thing to get used to one person and another person actually getting along together and always getting along year after year after year. As we were talking, probably our grandparents or great-grandparents and the like, you know, learn how to deal with that. They learn how to compromise. They learn how to do things in such a way that you are always kind of exalting a person, making them feel good about themselves, as opposed to in today's time where it's kind of everybody for themselves.
Well, yeah, and they couldn't escape like we can.
Yes.
We can go to the computer or phones or iPads, you know, TV, and you're right, they had to.
Yes, they were forced
Communicate.
to, get along or else, you know,
Right.
and there was, for a lot of them, there was no or else.
Right.
It was get along, make the
Mhm.
best of it,
You're
and
right.
even those that were part of your family would say the same thing. And as we talk about that, you know, let's talk about enablers. I think that's what they're called, people who actually help the person kind of stay in kind of what they're in, or how would you define an enabler?
Well, enablers can be all different ways. Enablers could be a family member who says it's really not that bad. He does love you, you know, and look how well he takes care of you and the children. Okay, that's almost enabling his behavior to continue. Or his friends, and I keep saying he, Gwen, and I don't mean that she cannot be abusers. As we both said, it's just a smaller
Right,
percentage
right.
of male victims compared to females. So please forgive me for keep saying she for the victim. But it could be that even the abusive individual's friends minimizing his violence. They might see it and go, well, all he did was push her. That's enabling his behavior to continue instead of calling him out on, you never push a woman, regardless,
Right.
you know, or never call her on a nice name, and think it's funny, you know. So even friends can enable a behavior to continue, because that's basically what you're talking about. Enablers usually continue or reinforce a negative behavior. You know, it's like somebody's on a diet. We know it, and we bring them French fries for lunch. We're enabling them to break their diet in a sense.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that can happen, and I think sometimes, and I don't ever want to blame the victim in this, so I'm not going to say they enable, but they minimize and deny the abuse. In my experience working with victims, I saw that happen over and over and over again. And a couple examples might have been, well, the victim would say to me, I know he didn't like his steak cooked like that. I shouldn't have done it. Well, he didn't have to hit you for you cooking the steak incorrectly. Or one time I picked a victim up from the hospital and she had a broken arm. And apparently her boyfriend had come home from work and was going out to the bar. She knew that made the abuse worse when he drank, so she stood in front of the door to block him from leaving. And when he removed her, he broke her arm. And she said, why did I do that? Well, I said back to her, why didn't he go out another door? You know, so they will take and accept the blame in this relationship. So I don't want to call them enablers, because I don't think they want the abuse to continue. But they do try to look for an answer. And if the answer means pointing the finger back at themselves, then that's what they'll do.
And there are individuals who see things going on, they want to help, they want to change the situation in some form or fashion, but there's always that issue of, if you, and people think this, you know, if I get involved and I'm endangering myself, I wonder how far I can go, how far should I go to try to help this individual, or find out if something's really going on, because I really think something's going on, but I'm not really sure just what I should do. What would you say to that person?
Well, I say you do have to be cautious, because in domestic violence situations, we know, because it's been in the news, where individuals will, you know, kill anybody in their way and then commit suicide or something. So you have to be cautious if it's neighbors, if it's something you're seeing out in public. I suggest you call law enforcement. They're trained to deal with it, they're trained to respond, and know how to do so safely. If it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, and you think that domestic violence is occurring, because there are some warning signs that I can go over with you. But if you think it's happening It does not hurt at all to go up to the individual privately, far away from anybody else, so nobody can overhear it, and say, you know, maybe I read something in the paper, I heard this show on Gwen's radio station, and I just want to know if everything's okay in your home.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, what do you mean? So I'm just concerned. I want to make sure you're safe in your home. That's all you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
If they say everything's fine, you say, okay, I'm glad to hear that. Do know I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
And drop it. They'll probably come to you when they're ready to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've showed you care, you didn't judge, you let them know you were there. I had this nasty bruise on my arm from running into a credenza at work. The door was open, and like now I've got a sweater on so nobody can see it. And I've got to give Ray Salazar a shout out, because he's the only one that says, I've been trained to say, is everything okay? And I said, yes it is, thank you for asking. And that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all it took, you know? If it hadn't been, I could have said, yeah, I'm okay. And then he probably would have known by that response that maybe he needed to get somebody to come talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all you need to do.
Awesome.
Let them know you care.
Yeah.
And some of the warning signs of a family member, a friend, a coworker being abused would be that their abusive partner is monitoring their time. They're very worried. If they're late, they've got to leave. Or maybe you're out for lunch and he calls or she calls him 5-10 times during lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a little excessive. That's a warning sign. Obviously, unexplained bruises, a look of anxiousness, and you can usually tell that. They start fidgeting or looking at their watch.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried about time. They're worried that they're doing something wrong. And like I said, unexplained injuries and continually having them are some of your warning signs.
There are people many times who are in this type of a situation who don't want other people to know, and then there are those who are fearful, as we discussed. But then there are also people who really do want to get out of the relationship. They want to get away and get as far away as they can. And one of the things we've talked about is the fact that sometimes it's important for them to actually leave the area.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start thinking about that, because this person is either a well-known person or they're just, they're just so abusive, and sometimes they work for law enforcement, and sometimes they work in these agencies that are able to kind of spot and find them. And so they're fearful of that as well. But for those individuals, it's important that they know that when they make contact with your agency, that everything's confidential. Even the shelters, their locations, everything is confidential. And but sometimes it's hard for you to get them, I'm sure, to follow through with the fact that you can't contact anybody, you can't do this, you can't do that, in that type of situation. And before you respond to that, let me just say, you listen to Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards. My guest, of course, is Cheryl Fuller, the Executive Director, CEO of the Domestic Abuse Council, and we're talking about domestic abuse, domestic violence, and the importance of being aware, and the importance of being a friend without being overly so or without being intrusive. The importance of letting people know that, number one, that you care, okay, just that you care. And this is WLE 1380 AM on your radio dial in Ormond Beach, Florida, Goliath Radio. I really feel for the abusers, but I can tell you that, as with the Ray Rice issue, there are people who are divided as to whether or not, you should put the person down because of what they did, and then they'll come back and say, oh, but she hit him too, type stuff. But the bottom line is that both the abuser and the abused need help. Exactly. They really need help.
Mm-hmm. They sure do. And I think that's real important to stress. I think it's actually a shame that it wasn't dealt with earlier and it had to become so public, because that's their choice to publicize and talk about it. And I feel sorry for them as a couple. I do, because we don't know what they've worked through. We don't know how they've dealt with it. We don't know what was going on. Not that any time is violence acceptable, but I just think it wasn't fair how it came out. I'm gonna come out and say that. But you brought up a couple things, and it is when you're dealing with a situation where your abusive partner is well known. Your abusive partner is maybe involved with law enforcement or is well known in our community. What do you do then? And like you said, you can call our shelter and say your name is anything. You know, you can say you're Cheryl Fuller. I don't care. Make up any name. We don't care. We'll tell you what we can do and provide you with the options that are available. If an individual did need to flee, or perhaps their partner, because of their involvement with law enforcement, could find our shelter, we have security cameras. We're secure. We know how to deal with law enforcement who are abusive. So if anybody is listening out there, we'd still be able to help you. We'd be able to make sure you were safe, whether you stayed at our shelter or if you chose to go elsewhere. But there are different resources available to individuals who need to flee and perhaps even need to change their name and address. There are resources we could help them with. And as far as the abusive individual, yes, they need help. They need to change because it's not going to go away regardless of the partner they're with. So help is available. We can also help that individual who calls us and wants to know where they can get help. So they call us and we'll give them the information of programs that can help them out.
Wonderful. Now, another issue that came up during the Ray Rice issue had to do with the culture of the ethnicity of the person, having come from maybe a background, a family experience of that being acceptable. Do you guys, is there research in regards to that, where there are differences in terms of the racial
No.
makeup of the abuser?
No.
Can people actually use that as an excuse?
No. No, not at all. Not at all. And I think in that case, Gwen, wasn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that the football player who disciplined his child?
No, there was another. Oh, I may be saying
That they
the wrong
used
word.
the culture
Yeah,
and the
wrong
race.
name. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And
Yes,
said,
they did. They
yes.
did. Mhm.
And you know, in the African American families, we spank our children or something. I mean, my family used spanking as a discipline
Yeah.
too.
So we all
okay?
did, okay?
Yes, and my dad did not use violence against my mother, so I don't, or that extreme of
Mhm.
discipline against the
Mhm.
children. So I don't think there's any correlation. There are no boundaries when it comes to domestic violence. There are no racial boundaries, ethnic boundaries, age, economic, religion, not at all. Unfortunately, it crosses all segments of our society, all. Now, there are studies, and one that we even did internally at our agency, and we still do, ask the residents who enter our program, how many of them witnessed family violence when they grew up. And 50% of the women, give or take, 49, 51, depending on the year, of the female victims who enter our shelter reported they grew up in a violent home. When we used to run a batterers program, which we have discontinued, but back when we did, we also asked the abusive individual that question, and 60%, again, give or take, it might have been 59, 62, around 60% of those individuals also said they witnessed domestic violence. So there's a strong correlation between being brought up in an abusive home and growing up to do the exact same thing in your intimate partner relationships, or becoming a victim. in your
Right,
intimate
yeah.
partner
And of course, the other thing is what you talked about in terms of those who bury it,
relationships.
who actually probably end up then not being able to have a fulfilling personal relationship because of what they've experienced and how they've
Or
lived.
they think it's normal. You know, they think it's normal that all relationships are like this. Or, you know, I know we have worked with victims before that said, you know, I called mom and she said, oh honey, you know your dad was like that, it gets better. You know, so you go to your family for support, and if they had that type of relationship, they don't say get out, they say hang in there. So it can be very
Yes,
hard.
yes,
It can be
it
very
can
hard.
be. For those who have been abused, they get away, they get help and assistance. And this you may not know the answer to, but just to offer a glimmer of hope to those individuals, I would hope that as they get hope and as they go through the myriad social services that are available that help them help their children and the like, that they do find relationships that they're able to become a part of, and they are able to kind of have a good life.
Mm-hmm. On October 14th, we're having our annual meeting and domestic violence awareness luncheon. We're going to be having some survivors from our program
Wonderful.
do some testimonials, and I think that you'll be surprised, because yes, there can be successful nonviolent relationships after you leave an abusive one. There are opportunities for you for professional growth and to change your whole life around. You just got to take that hard step, and it's a hard step, and sometimes it's a step forward, a step back, a step forward, a step back. I've been doing some corresponding electronically through email with an individual who's got a great professional job and is just extremely, I mean, she's running into roadblocks, but I think things are working in the right direction now. So, and that's what I said to her: one step back, two forward, and that's where she's heading right now. She's on the forward track, so it can work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the luncheon that you're having, is it too late for people to apply or
Not
purchase
at all.
tickets? And how can they do that?
Right, we don't have tickets. All you have to do is either call our agency. But the easier way to do it, if you have access to the internet, is to go to our website and you can go to the PayPal button on there and just PayPal for the annual meeting. It's $30 per person. Sponsors are $250, and that gets your name on different things and 4 tickets, or it's 4 seats, to the luncheon. It is from 11:30 to 1 at the Halifax Yacht Club, again on October 14th. And the deadline is next Monday, October 6th. That's when we need to know who's coming, so we can give our numbers to the facility, the venue. And we have a really exciting, like I said, we have some survivors that are gonna give some testimonials, but we have an individual coming from Atlanta, Georgia as our keynote speaker. Her name is Stacy Dugan, and she is the chairwoman of Men Stopping Violence. And if you go to their website, they're an awesome organization which talks about getting men involved in the movement of ending violence against women. Just some dynamic individuals who really work hard to say, okay, men, if we're part of the problem, we need to be a huge part of the solution. So, awesome. She's their chairwoman, and she used to live here in Florida and help the Florida Coalition get some legal advocacy going. So she's going to be a keynote speaker, and we welcome you all to come and hear the great work they're doing, and hopefully we can start that here in our area.
And as we're talking about this fundraiser, share with our listeners, if you would, if you're able to break it down, the avenues of fundraising. How are you funded for the domestic abuse program?
Right. We have a variety of funding depending on the program, but for our emergency shelter, most of our funding comes through the state of Florida through something called the Domestic Violence Trust Fund. That was set up years ago, where what they do is every time somebody gets married or divorced in the state of Florida, a portion of the fee to do that, is earmarked for the domestic violence centers, certified domestic violence centers, and it's a formula that they use to compute how much goes where based on the population of your county, the percentage of rural area and females, and then the actual number of divorces and marriages. So that's one of the sources. We get a little bit of general revenue, and then the state also gets some federal funds. So there's federal funds that go through the state to us through the Family Violence Prevention and Safety Act. We get some VAWA funds. We are also a Proud United Way agency. We get some money through the County of Volusia. And of course, we rely heavily on donations. And the proceeds from our thrift store also are used to operate the shelter. The shelter, it takes a lot to operate a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week facility. We have to have staff there every day. We have to have everything you have in your home. We have to have for an average of 40 to 50 women and children every day are living with us. So if we need diapers and we didn't have them donated, we're out there buying them. So think of everything that we might encounter. We have to be prepared to provide for our families. So that adds up a lot. Our legal services are funded through VOCA, Victims of Crime Act, and some county funds. Our transitional housing, we receive funding through the Housing and Urban Development. So it's a variety of funding, Gwen, that we really work hard to do what we do with the funding we receive.
And it's important, and I would say this to our listeners, that you make your donations to the Domestic Abuse Council as well. They accept every dollar that you provide, and they put it to good use, as you've heard. And it's important that people understand too that of all the various avenues that you receive your dollars, be it federal, state, county, and and the individuals, etc. It's all kind of volatile because there's no set amount you're guaranteed to have every year, because every year the legislature's in session, they re-examine whether or not they're going to continue funding at that level, increase it or decrease it.
Exactly.
And at federal level, state level, county level. So it's important that people understand that their support of this program is very, very key and important. And if you're giving, that you continue to give, because sometimes that's the most stable funding that you can receive.
Exactly.
Or those private individuals who buy into the need and understand it and try to do what they can do, support it. For all of our listeners, if you would know and understand that this is an important issue, it's an issue that's a life and death issue. And an issue that has an immediate impact, but also has a lifetime impact as well.
Exactly.
And as we, I've had individuals on, and we talk about having, healthy communities, and it starts with having healthy individuals. So they need to receive the services that are related to this program and a whole lot of other programs too. And I say this about healthy people too. You don't want some people to get health care, etc., but you're breathing the same air that they're breathing. I mean, they're exhaling into the same air that you're inhaling. So it's important that, and we're all out there in the communities, and sometimes innocents get caught up in the situations where these abusers want to attack and become even more abusive and violent with those that they're abusing. And so we all get caught up in that from time to time. So it's important that we do what we can to stop the violence. To stop the violence.
And I think it's important that we continue to talk about domestic violence.
Yes.
One of the things I think was really, really wonderful about the football incident coming out was that people started talking about it. I mean, there for a while it was on the news every night. They were talking about it during the football games. People need to talk about it. Domestic violence happens in 1 out of 3 homes. It's happening. We pretend like it doesn't happen when it is happening. We need to make sure victims know that help's available, and we need to hold the abusive individual accountable for their behavior. Because like you said, they need help too. Well, if we keep it this hush-hush secret, nobody's going to get help, and it's going to continue because it continues generation after generation.
And I heard, hopefully this is true, that the NFL is starting to actually provide funding.
I haven't heard that, but that'd be wonderful.
I thought they were. Well, if you haven't NFL, then you need to start.
Right, and there might be conversations. And so, that could happen on a national level, obviously, and then maybe it'll trickle down to us, but I'm just happy with the fact that they're talking about it.
Absolutely.
And I know that football is a very rough sport, but it's not every football player that's abusive. There was a gentleman on the game last week, and I don't watch football, but I heard him talking, that he was a child survivor of domestic violence. He and his siblings left with his mom when he was a young boy, and he was glad that he could survive it and speak out against domestic violence. So That's what we need, people to speak out against domestic violence and help other individuals know that it's okay to get help, it's okay to ask for help.
Right, and to help the survivors, as you're saying, some of them are still in abusive relationships, but they're surviving because they're still alive.
Exactly.
And those who have been able to get away from it, who are survivors, as with the NFL football player, who are out there, who understand the need and the importance for trying to get help to these individuals. They too should not only, talk about it, share that, but also financially support the effort.
Exactly.
That's
That'd
so
be
key
great.
and so important. Oh,
And
it's
you know,
awesome.
some of the things too, Gwen, yes, financial support's definitely needed, because we never know. And the minute we get funding cut, the biggest cost for our agency is personnel and utilities. Well, I've gotta keep utilities going, because my families need electricity, water, etc. But, so I'm gonna have to cut something back, which means cutting a program, which helps the families that come to us. So
Right.
any financial help's appreciated, but also families that come to us and need to start all over need everything that you have in your home. You know, the wear and tear we have on the furniture in our facility. So keep us in mind when you have donations that you want to issue of household goods, furniture, taking stuff to our thrift store, shopping at our thrift store. Those are ways you can contribute if you can't write a check.
And tell them the address of your thrift store. Whenever I feel the need to go there, I always have to call her and ask her, where is it? Where is it?
Yes, it's 949A Bevel Road, but the best way to think about it is it's on the corner of Bevel and Nova Road.
Right.
It's on the south corner of Bevel, the southeast corner of Bevel and Nova Road.
And they have some great things there, I can tell you that. So really and truly you should support that, but support the overall domestic abuse program, because it's making a difference. You know, we talk a lot about things that make a difference, but this is a program that definitely makes a difference, and it's so important and so key that everyone who can provide that support. And if you don't have the dollars, but you have something that works, not a broken down something, but something that works and is in good condition, that you are able to donate to the Domestic Abuse Council, please do that as well. And I will do a shout out to my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, who does make a contribution of stuff, new stuff, to the Domestic Abuse Council every year, in terms of Pampers and blankets and sheets and all of that kind of stuff that's so key and so important. Yes. And we would just suggest that other sororities and fraternities get involved and start doing the same, as well as making financial donations as well, because we do both. So please do that. Now, as we close, if you would share the information again as to how they can contact you.
Okay, the local hotline is 255-2102. Statewide hotline 1-800-500-1119. And also our website, www.domesticabusecouncil.com. We would love to have you volunteer, donate, just call us so you can learn more about us.
Wonderful. Well, as always, Cheryl, you are so informative, and as always, too, you provide that information that's going to help us hopefully get more people involved in helping the Domestic Abuse Council, and in helping those who are abused. And as you've said, even the abusers can call and get help and get assistance and referrals to places. So thank you. As always,
Gwen.
my friend, it has been great. And to all of you, all of our listeners, and those who will watch the video later, please help. It's so key and so important. And when you wonder about, organizations that you give funds to, whether or not it's really going to be helped, you should know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is one of those organizations that will take every dollar that you provide and put it to good use. So thank you in advance to all of you.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you all for listening. Be sure to join us every Thursday starting, we're saying around 6:20, as we discuss issues to inform and empower you, our listeners. Be sure to go to the website, www.gwen-truth.com. And until next time, be informed, be empowered, and stand tall for that which is right and truthful like the Domestic Abuse Council and all of the support that you can give there. Again, this is Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards. My guest is Cheryl Fuller with the Domestic Abuse Council, and she, like I, and hopefully all of you, we're still standing. You guys be blessed and have a great week.
The Truth with
You
your
are
host,
so good.
Azama-Edwards, exclusively
You
on
are so good. You
W.
should
The Mutual
let
Admiration
Gwen-
Society.